A masterpiece is an incredible journey, an experience none can replicate, gameplay we'll never forget, and a story with characters we'll never want to forget. Usually, it's a label applied to games considered to be among the best of the best. Halo Combat Evolved, Metal Gear Solid 2, Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil 2, even The Witcher 3. These are games which have earned the legendary title of masterpiece. The Last of Us is almost certainly an amazing game. But does it truly earn a spot among those legendary titans of gaming? That, my good friends, is the question I have set out to answer in this video. So, pull up a seat, grab some snacks, and prepare for a trip into Naughty Dog's beloved apocalyptic world. This is why The Last of Us is nearly a masterpiece. Before we can properly dissect the narrative of The Last of Us, we have to talk about its characters. There are a great many moments you'll spend with the cast of The Last of Us. During this time, we aren't just introduced to side characters, we're shown who they are and how they fit into the world around them. This world of loss, sacrifice, and hopelessness. A world filled with lost souls and lost stories. Lifeless shells wandering and corrupted. These are what humans have become. The Last of Us is exactly as the title suggests, an examination of the last of humanity in its darkest times. Specifically, a look at the surviving parts of our own humanity as we face an apocalypse. This game forces its characters to see the worst fragments of themselves and their actions. The iconic protagonist from The Last of Us and one of the gaming industry's most prominent characters in recent years, Joel is a character many of us have come to know and love over the past 9 years. But how did we meet him? We are introduced to Joel while playing as his daughter, Sarah. We don't really get a chance to fully take in their bond as father and daughter before the outbreak begins. As calamity strikes, the peaceful opening scene quickly fades and the new world arrives to rip the old one apart. Just as Joel is thrust into this dark new reality, we are put through the same ordeal alongside him, as he experiences a grave tragedy. With his daughter dead, Joel retreats within himself. He loses a sense of purpose and, more importantly, the humanity of his former life. He is a shell of a man with a hollow inside. As this new world overtakes the buildings and cities, so too are the humans who remain within it overtaken by grief and sorrow and indifference. Joel is no exception to this. The Last of Us portrays Joel not as a hero of the apocalypse, but as a lost soul, just as corroded as anyone else by the dark deeds done to survive. He is the protagonist, but not the hero we might expect him to be. Joel's lost his will to live in many respects. He merely survives and exists from day to day. He's no longer in touch with his brother Tommy and barely connects with anyone around him in Boston, aside from Jess. There's no heartbeat to his existence in this new world. He is just another individual doomed to inhabit it. That is, until he meets a girl named Ellie. The second part of the iconic Last of Us duo is the crude, spunky, and often charming Ellie. She is a teenager who's born into a world that is the only normal she's ever known. Ellie has no concept of what movies used to be like. She never went to church, went on a field trip, visited the beach with friends, or picked up ice cream on a hot summer's day. The only taste she ever gets is through the leftovers and scraps of what might have been. In truth, Ellie only knows the harsh reality which surrounds her. She has had friends and family, but has lost all of them throughout her life. Even when she grew up, in the safety of a quarantine zone, she never really got to experience a proper home environment. However, Ellie does savor the opportunity to sample every chance to learn and understand things about the world she missed. She longs to read comics and discover new things, anything that could give her a picture of what life was like before. She wants to see it and experience it. One could say, in the early parts of the game, Ellie is defined by her curiosity. When she meets Joel, the two are at odds with each other. It's only through the course of their long and weary journey that we get to truly see how they fit together. Ellie doesn't just become some surrogate daughter, and Joel isn't just some surrogate father. There's so much more to their connection. This is where the key ingredient to The Last of Us begins to take shape. However, before I can start talking about that, we have to take a look at the bigger picture. This being the narrative of the game and the characters whom Joel and Ellie meet throughout it. What is the point of a journey? What effect does it have on those who endure its many tribulations? How do we live differently once we've reached the end of our journey? These are questions good stories like The Last of Us will and should address. These are questions I asked myself while playing it. After all, why endure something if there's no point to it? There has to be a lesson or message that wraps a narrative bow on the essence of what a game's story actually accomplishes. Otherwise, what is the point? The point of The Last of Us is metamorphosis, or perhaps put in better terms, it's about reconstruction. The saga begins in Boston, with Joel and Jess working a job outside the quarantine zone. During the job, the two run into Marlene. In exchange for a valuable cache of resources, Joel and Jess agree to escort Ellie to the Massachusetts State House. Along the way, Jess becomes infected and is forced to stay behind to buy Joel and Ellie time to escape. There is a recurring trend to The Last of Us. Every place Joel and Ellie pass on their way to find the Fireflies offers a distinctively darker look into the way people live, or what they've become. This starts with Bill. As a former acquaintance of Joel's, Bill is called upon to answer a favor. However, the more we explore Bill's town, which is laden with booby traps and defenses of every sort, the more we come to realize that Bill doesn't just want to keep the infected away, he wants to keep everyone and everything away, with the trap-filled town serving as a representation of his reclusive lifestyle. He seeks to live out his days alone and free from bother. Perhaps he's given up trying to find meaning. The player will come to understand that any kind of connection Bill had left in this world was lost when he and his friend parted ways, the body of whom we discover hung from a ceiling later in the same level. Even as Joel attempts to console him before leaving with Ellie, Bill makes clear he doesn't want any friendship, nor does he want Joel's pity. He wants to go back to his place and retreat away from the world that's left. When Joel and Ellie arrive in Pittsburgh, they encounter Henry and Sam, brothers who have been on the run after their group was ambushed by bandits in the city. With Joel and Ellie's help, the duo make it out of Pittsburgh. There, the collective band of survivors agree to venture in search of the Fireflies. While I'm not sure if this was the intent, it does feel to me that Henry and Sam might be acting as a foreboding reflection of Joel and Ellie. Henry is the guardian protector who must guide his younger brother through the apocalypse in search of something, maybe a home or some purpose. Sam shares the same lighthearted tendencies as Ellie does. Their interactions together are some of the best in the game, and they remind us what it was like to be innocent in the world before.
Totally. How did you two end up together?
Oh, a friend of mine, Marlene, asked him to take me to the Fireflies.
You seem to get along well.
Yeah, well, now I just boss him around. Isn't that right, Joel? Oh,
Your turn.
okay. Just throw it.
Yeah.
Boosh! I am a natural.
Luck.
No, it wasn't.
How's luck?
All right, get out of here. You're getting cocky. Here we go.
Horrible.
All right. It's a tie.
No. You clearly got destroyed.
How did I clearly get destroyed? That's practically a tie.
Yeah, okay.
It's only when faced with a sad truth that Sam loses that innocence and loses himself. Henry tries to do his best to be a guardian while also being practical. He's clearly trying to teach Sam how to survive in this world, possibly because he doesn't know when he himself will bite the bullet. He just knows that survival isn't guaranteed. And when and if he does go out, Sam has to be ready to be on his own. The sad irony of it all is that it's actually poor Sam who becomes infected, with Henry being forced to kill him. Unable to see any reason or purpose to life without his brother, and probably overwhelmed by grief, Henry turns the gun on himself and ends it all right then and there. However dark or sad Bill's tale was, Henry and Sam's ends even darker. After Joel and Ellie push ahead to Colorado in search of the Firefly laboratory, things continue to go downhill. Joel is gravely injured and it's on poor Ellie to rescue him. This particular part of the game, at least in the opening section at the campus, was handled very well. I really felt a sense of urgency and the threat of bandits all around, which forces Ellie to start really pulling her weight. With Joel incapacitated for a while, Ellie takes center stage as a playable character. For the most part, I enjoyed my time with her playable missions, although it does start out with what amounts to a rather average Tomb Raider hunting section. During this part, Ellie encounters David. In the beginning of the level, David appears to be friendly, even working with Ellie to survive a group of infected. If I'm being honest, it was at this part of the game where The Last of Us turned into a match of COD zombies. Ellie has to withstand a wave-based assault, protect window barriers, and avoid dying until the end of the round. I guess if The Last of Us was going to build a level around Call of Duty Zombies, it makes sense they put Richtofen in it with Ellie. That's right, David and Richtofen are voiced by the same person. Nathan Drake, I mean Nolan North. Anyway, jokes aside, since we're talking about Ellie's segment from the winter section of the game, let's take a detour and talk briefly about The Last of Us DLC expansion, Left Behind. Left Behind is a brief but well-made narrative expansion to the world of The Last of Us. Perhaps more accurately put, it is a bonus episode of sorts. The story of Left Behind is split into two separate timelines. The first follows Ellie as she seeks out medical supplies for a wounded Joel during the winter section of the main game. The second story thread follows Ellie and her best friend Riley, set before the events of the main game. The second story is the main meat of this DLC. It gives us a better glimpse into what Ellie was like before she met Joel. Although you could also read the supplemental comic book American Dreams for even more context. Still, when discussing Left Behind's narrative, the strength is in the parts focusing on Ellie's past. A lot of the present-day stuff with Ellie searching for medical supplies feels too overtly like DLC filler rather than something as meaningful as the fantastic character moments with Riley in the mall. It's a great reminder of Ellie's most charming qualities, which weren't as prevalent toward the end of the game. So for players who will have finished the first game, it is surely a fun look back at the quirkiness of Ellie's youth before she grows up in the second one. All in all, Left Behind offers a wonderful opportunity to add more context for some of Ellie's views, behavior, and decisions in the main game. More importantly, it shows the player why she doesn't want Joel to leave her to begin with, if it wasn't already obvious from the main game's many context clues. Honestly, if you're going to play The Last of Us, I really do recommend you also play Left Behind after you've finished it. It's a really fun little diversion, even if it's on the short side in terms of length.
A boiled egg in the morning is really hard to beat.
That's funny.
That is funny.
I like that.
I'm reading a book on anti-gravity, and it's impossible to put down.
Nice.
Yes, that one's awesome. It's not that the guy didn't know how to juggle. He just didn't have the balls to do it.
Oh.
I'm glad I know sign language. It's become quite handy.
That's silly.
That's really silly.
Now, back to the winter segment of The Last of Us. As I've previously mentioned, with Joel and Ellie progress on their journey, they come across circumstances increasingly more severe than the last. In the case of David, we see how desperation can warp a human being to become a monster, no different from the infected who claim human lives as arbitrarily as a wild animal. But it's important to understand the significance of David's place in the narrative and the effect it has on our main characters, specifically Ellie. Ellie has, at this point, killed and done some stuff to survive. She's seen some crazy stuff both before and after meeting Joel. However, if we view The Last of Us as an apocalyptic coming-of-age story for Ellie, we can consider the moment she kills David as the moment where she is forced to come to terms with the real world, much like a teenager has to awaken to reality and become an adult. Directly following David's death, Ellie's mood and temperament change, something Joel takes notice of while entering Salt Lake City.
Everything all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You just kind of seem extra quiet today.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's not. It's fine.
While Ellie doesn't suddenly take a complete 180 in her character arc, she does lose some of her more lighthearted and spunky traits for the remainder of the game. Once again, this reflects the idea of the coming-of-age story that was lingering in the background of the narrative. Showing us this deliberate juxtaposition between Ellie in the early parts of the game and how her personality matures toward the end of the game is a nice little touch. In the last segment of The Last of Us, our main characters arrive in Salt Lake City. Here they finally locate the Fireflies, the group which has been held up in an almost prophetic sense. Upon arrival, all seems to be going well. Joel is reunited with Marlene, and by all accounts, Ellie is safe. For a moment, you can relax and take a step back knowing you finally reached the end of the road. And just when you're starting to feel relief, that's when the game pulls a 180 on you. Of all the horrible things you've witnessed on the journey from Boston, the worst things of all are Marlene and the Fireflies' betrayal. Fellow human survivors who are supposed to be the good guys, heroes even. They are preparing to sacrifice a young girl's life to potentially develop a vaccine that may not even work. Joel is naturally in shock that Marlene, who knew Ellie's own mother and was supposed to be looking out for her, would actually forfeit Ellie's life so easily. It's actually this moment which resonated so well with me. As Marlene attempts to justify herself, saying she doesn't have a choice, Joel correctly checks her with a healthy dose of reality.
I get it. But whatever it is you think you're going through right now is nothing to what I have been through. I knew her since she was born. I promised her mother I would look after her.
Then why are you letting this happen?
Because this isn't about me, or even her. There is no other choice here.
Yeah, you keep telling yourself that bull.
As Joel so appropriately suggests here, human beings always have a choice. Here, Marlene is choosing to turn her back on Ellie, because she wants to believe in a cure, a way to turn back the proverbial doomsday clock, as it were. The truth is, it's only a gamble. There's no certainty they could produce a cure or some miracle vaccine from Ellie. This is actually another great example of how this game focuses on building up layers to the world and the people who live in it. Seeing an entire faction of human beings letting their source of hope actually drive them to do unforgivable things, is a great juxtaposition to someone like David or even the bandits with their darker and selfish sense of purpose. Once again, we are able to witness just how many different things can drive humanity to the brink in this new world. Stuff like this is what makes this game stand out from the rest in terms of how it addresses not only the state of the world, but the psychological aspects of those who inhabit it. But as we return to the finale of the game, Joel is forced to make a daring choice and turn on the Fireflies. The player takes control and you fight your way to the operating room. There, the player has a fateful meeting with the retcon gods. The sequence has you kill a seemingly random scientist who may or may not be the catalyst for the plot of the sequel. After it's all said and done, you escape with Ellie and confront Marlene in the garage. This last encounter before the epilogue is a thoroughly satisfying conclusion to the epic journey you've been on. And just to add that extra bit of narrative tension, the writers of Joel conceal the truth from Ellie. The final moments between Joel and Ellie, both in the car ride and in the area outside of Jackson, showcase a bittersweet ending that perfectly encapsulates the spirit of The Last of Us. There is a sense of victory for Joel. He saved Ellie and has now formed a connection with her into the idea of living for more than just survival. Ellie has a new home and people who love her to watch her back. She doesn't have to be alone or abandoned anymore. The tragedy is that Ellie is suffering from survivor's guilt, and Joel was forced to lie to the one person he cares about most in this world. It's a story that's poetic and wholly refreshing for the zombie genre. More than that, it's a well-told narrative that is worth revisiting more than once. The gameplay of The Last of Us is probably its least remarkable aspect. A limited combination of third-person stealth and action-oriented cover-based mechanics are employed to allow the player to traverse the game's combat engagements. Outside of combat with bandits or outmaneuvering a group of infected, moving through the levels consists of either dragging Ellie around on floating cargo pallets.
Alright, I need you to...
I know. Step on the pallet.
Or carrying and placing a ladder in certain spots.
Ellie! Ellie!
There really isn't much going on here in terms of depth, though venturing around the explorable areas a little does allow the player to gather some hidden resources and collectibles. Still, there's not a lot going for the main gameplay loop. The guns do feel fun to use, specifically the revolver and the sniper rifle. These two are the real standouts. I like the sound effects and the fact that they feel nice and meaty. When you get an opportunity to nail a headshot, it's very satisfying. The biggest issue with the gameplay is just how average it is. All games have some kind of repetitive gameplay, but the truly great ones are able to make you enjoy the repetition with how awesome or fun it is to experience. This game just couldn't quite do that for me. It really felt like the biggest parts of the gameplay were the environmental aspects. The way the levels are designed to be very immersive and fleshed out with all kinds of detail. That's the sort of thing which really helps sell the player on this world. More than that, seeing Ellie interact with the environment and the world around her is really fascinating to watch. On certain occasions, it can lead to optional dialogue or extra moments you might have otherwise missed had you been in a hurry.
Hey, there's another one. These posters are everywhere.
I saw this right before the outbreak.
You did? Does he totally gut her by the end?
Nobody gets gutted. It's a dumb teen movie.
Who dragged you to see it then?
I don't know. Let's just stay focused, all right?
All right.
These are the parts where The Last of Us really shines the brightest, and it is these bright spots which make us care about the characters and story so much. These are the little human moments we can all connect with. The fact that taking your time and pacing your traversal of the levels allows you to encounter these optional dialogue or character moments is what makes the otherwise average gameplay loop a lot more bearable. The Last of Us is a story about reconstruction. It's about taking what was broken and making it whole again. Joel was lost, fractured, and broken apart when the story begins. But by the end, he's found something worth living and caring for, a girl named Ellie. He saved her life, and she gave him a reason to fight for and live a life. When The Last of Us starts, we undertake a journey where we witness the absolute worst depths to which the human race has sunk. This world, the world of The Last of Us, it is unforgiving and unrelenting. Merely surviving is itself a task many are unfit for. But even for those that are, we're shown how much they have to give up and lose of themselves in order to survive. Within The Last of Us, this is a period of time for these characters where any faith in themselves and any sort of hope has been stripped from them. Joel let his soul and his very humanity slip away after Sarah died. Ellie awakens that humanity again and shows him it's okay to have hope. Joel goes from a wayward stranger to a man who believes there is a life worth living, even in this dark and horrific time. Even as he thought his heart was all dried up, it was Ellie who became his heartbeat. There's such a beautiful and poetic humanity about The Last of Us we all can connect with inside. It is the aspect of human connection in the face of impossible odds that makes the story resonate so well with players. Because deep down, we all crave that close connection with others, whether it's outside among the people we meet in our day-to-day lives, or from the comfort of our couches with a headset on while playing multiplayer games. We all crave some form of connection. By the end of The Last of Us, Joel and Ellie have felt the power of their connection and the impact it has had on each other's life. In a way, we feel the same, because we have connected with them too. The Last of Us is a powerful and sometimes wondrous journey. It's a game about finding the bright moments when you're surrounded by darkness. This is the secret ingredient to The Last of Us. We have a game where the world and most of the people left in it are scarred and polluted by what they've either seen or done. However, we are shown that by finding the quiet moments and those special chances for meaningful connection between humans, it is worth braving the horrors and giving life a chance. This is a game many should play, but not all will love. If you are playing The Last of Us, chances are you're playing for the story. While that story is great, the music that accompanies it is great, and the characters we meet in it are great, the gameplay is not so great. At its best, the gameplay is above average some of the time. There's plenty of fun to be had while engaging enemies, but not incredible enough for me to bestow the title of masterpiece upon it. And there you have it. The only negative thing this game has going for it, which I could find, is in its moment-to-moment gameplay. While this game might not be a masterpiece in the eyes of this reviewer, that doesn't mean it's not a terrific game. As a matter of fact, to point out how highly I think of the experience I had with this game, I decided to actually rate the game on a scale of 1 to 10. For The Last of Us, I can easily give this title a 9 out of 10. It's not a masterpiece, but only because its gameplay holds it back. The narrative of the game is so incredible, but this is a video game. To me, for a video game to be called a masterpiece, it has to excel in its gameplay. The Last of Us excels in story, characters, design, and music. For that alone, the game easily earns itself a 9 out of 10 rating. But with that, we've come to the end of the video. I hope you found this video enjoyable. I worked really hard to bring this to you guys. Be sure to check out the second part of my Last of Us video series when I release a review with my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, liking, and clicking that little bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any new videos as soon as they drop. Thank you so much, and have yourself a great day.